What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Stateside Footy, America's biggest little soccer podcast on YouTube. And of course, today is another edition of the American Hotspur, a pre-match build-up as our beloved Tottenham Hotspur will take on Nottingham Forest tomorrow at the City Ground. Good grief, good Lord, I can't even speak English. I'm that excited. Before we begin, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons, and also make sure you turn on your notification bell so you do not miss out on any upcoming Stateside Footy content. And of course, tomorrow is the Hotspur live stream, as we will obviously be doing our weekly live stream with Tottenham Hotspur, and of course, potentially a U.S. men's national team retro live stream as we get ready for World Cup 2026. All right, let's go ahead and get into it because we have a lot to talk about. We do have some news and notes first and foremost, and we begin with Dominic Solanke. And word has come out that Solanke is training back on grass after the ankle surgery. Now, this is absolutely fantastic news, considering that striker really has been a bugaboo position for Tottenham Hotspur. And I understand that most people will point to the left side. 100%. That is a massive area of concern. But when you look at the striker position, essentially since Dom went down, we've been dealing with just a lack of form, a lack of health in some aspects at that position. And when you look at the way that Thomas Frank likes to play football, he likes to play that high possession based game where your creative 10 will drop deep to make a touch, or your striker will come down to make a touch, to play that little bit of a hold-up game as certain things progress up the pitch so you can hold that ball up high. Dominic Solanke is one of those type of guys, and we saw it last year under Ange Postecoglou. The dude is big, and he actually plays incredibly well in that hold-up game. And so from that standpoint, having him back healthy and potentially, being somebody who can bang in goals. I understand right now Richarlison is in a little bit of a purple patch. I think he scored 4 of his last 5. But that being said, I would probably assume Dominic Solanke is going to be a huge asset for Thomas Frank moving forward, to the point where if you told me that the only 2 signings in the January window would be somebody like Antoine Semenyo and maybe a Nathaniel Brown, and they brought a Luka Vuskovic back off a loan, I would think that would be a phenomenal window. Because again, getting a guy like Dominic Solanke is almost like getting somebody through the door as well, too. And I would probably assume that Thomas Frank would have no problem, riding with Solanke the rest of the way until the summer from that standpoint. Because, again, I just don't think the striker market's going to bear a lot of fruit in January, especially around Europe. A lot of teams are still going to be in the Champions League or the Europa League. This isn't like it was before under the group stage of either, where by January 1st, most people knew who were in, who were going to progress, and who was already out. And then from that stage, you may find deals at that stage. I just don't think it's going to work this time around. I would probably assume that if Spurs want to upgrade at the striker position, it's probably going to have to be a summer window type of thing. And so from that standpoint, getting Dominic Solanke back, at least for the last 6 months of the season, is going to bear a lot of fruit for Thomas Frank, and especially if the way that Thomas Frank wants to play football. And so from that standpoint, I'm actually quite excited about this because, again, what we've seen over the last couple games is not the way that Thomas Frank likes to play football. And I think he stated it on multiple occasions, that he does not like to play direct football. He likes to play that that high possession, beautiful, tiki-taka style of football. And okay, I guess to each his own. If that's the way he wants to play, fine. But he's going to have guys who are very excellent in the hold up in order to play that style of football. And Dominic Solanke is going to be that type of guy. The other piece of news and notes has to surround Antoine Semenyo. And, of course, he's been heavily linked with not only Manchester City and Liverpool, but also Tottenham Hotspur as well, too. And there was a lot of talk that probably Spurs were probably going to be very low on that list. That was until word came out that this ownership group, Enoch, is willing to do something they've never done to show that Antoine Semenyo that they're absolutely for real. And that would be to hand out the richest personal contract in Spurs history in order to get him. And when I heard that, I'm like, okay, phenomenal, right? That's something I think Spurs fans want to hear. Now, on the one hand, it's like, okay, we've heard this time and time and time again, especially over the course of the last 25 years, that Spurs were ambitious, yada, 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 only for them to turn around and bring in somebody that was subpar from the name that I think we all expected it to be, or we just wouldn't even have anything happening in the transfer window whatsoever. So from that standpoint, I think Spurs fans are like kind of in that position where it's kind of like wait and see. And if they do, fantastic. And then we're all of a sudden we will know that this ownership group is for real. But that being said, my first initial reaction to this was like, okay, Antoine Semenyo. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Semenyo, and he's a right-sided winger playing the left side, and he can do it well. He's used to the Premier League, but he's doing it with Bournemouth. And again, no disrespect to Bournemouth, but they don't make deep cup runs. They don't play in Europe. So there's that. But then one wonders, and I heard this last night as well too, especially when it comes to potential move to Manchester City, that he might get lost on the left side, a la Jack Grealish the first time around. Okay, that makes sense. Jack Grealish was a guy who was very well liked when he was with Villa, and then he goes to Manchester City, and then all of a sudden falls off a cliff. I can understand that type of sentiment. That being said, I also somewhat feel the same way with Spurs as well too. That if he comes to Tottenham Hotspur, that there's a potential for that to do as well too. And when you look at the way that Thomas Frank plays football and the way that he likes to have his wingers hugging the touchline, it almost feels like it almost feels like it's going to be a Xavi situation again too, where it's like the farther away that you take Antoine Semenyo away from goal, the worse it's going to get, because his skill set is more in line of an inside forward. Yes, he could cross the ball. That's a part of it. But that being said, it almost feels like when you look at his size and you look at his physicality, it almost feels like he would be better in a situation where it'd be a little bit more direct, almost kind of like the way that Bournemouth plays football. That's the reason why, he looks so goddamn good. I have a little bit of a reservation with Antoine Semenyo coming to Spurs, and I do apologize that for all my TikTok crowd out there, because my camera just fell. It's unfortunate, but for me, it's like, do I want Spurs to break their all-time transfer record for Antoine Semenyo, or would I like Spurs to go out and find somebody that might be a little bit better for them? That I'm kind of leaning in that direction, but I don't know, man. You guys tell me. All right, so it's weird because I like the idea of Antoine Semenyo. I just don't know if it's worth giving out our biggest contract for a player like that. If it was a striker, maybe. I don't know. The way that I look at this is, me personally, I want a guy who not only competes at a high level within his own division, but also has a little bit of a Champions League experience pedigree as well too. Like, I understand that Semenyo is a very, very, very popular player right now, but again, I want everybody to slow down real quick, because again, he's coming from Bournemouth. And this was the same reservations that I had with Solanke last year when he came in. late in the window. It's like, yes, like the progression of Solanke was good, but that being said, Bournemouth don't make deep cut runs and they don't play in Europe. And so you're asking a player that is playing once a week to come into a side that's playing 3 times a week. So now all of a sudden you have to ask that question of whether or not he's going to be capable of keeping pace, but also is he going to be able to stay healthy? Because now all of a sudden you're asking him to triple his workload. But that being said, it's like if you're willing to pay him to come in, okay, cool. Maybe you might feel like he's worth it. But that being said, do I really, really want Spurs to break a personal record and hand out the richest personal contract in club history for Antoine Semenyo? My first initial reaction is no, probably not, because I have a feeling I know how this is going to play out. And again, when you look at the style in which Thomas Frank likes to play football, it's not direct attacking. It is high possession, where he likes guys to drop deep, make touch, and then progress slowly up the pitch, hold the ball, and then overwhelm his opposition with possession as they get closer to the goal. And the way that I look at the way that he plays his wingers, it's like, dude, he just wants his wingers to hug the touchline. And I don't know, man. It's like, do you guys on one hand, I like Mohamed Kudus, but that being said, do I think he would be better if he was playing closer to goal? Yeah, 100%. And this is the same thing with Antoine Semenyo. It's the same thing with Semenyo. It's the same thing with Kudus. It's the same thing with Xavi. I want them closer to goal. And I just don't think that Thomas Frank is going to adjust his attack, his tactical prowess to be playing a more of a counter pressing, rock and roll style of football. Do I think that he's going to all of a sudden switch it up and then just play something completely different than what he's been doing for the last 15 years as a coach? 100% no. And so from that standpoint, it's like I want somebody that kind of already plays in that system, that understands when he steps through the door just exactly what's going to be required of him. But I also want that player to have Champions League pedigree, that is coming from a team that might be currently in the Champions League or the Europa League, that understands the responsibility of the workload of what he's stepping into. From that standpoint, I think there potentially could be better options that actually are probably going to be either at that level or potentially even better. So I think this is an opportunity for Spurs to get creative in the winter window. But that being said, again, I'll preface this again by saying, if you told me at the end of January that our window was Antoine Semenyo, Nathaniel Brown, and we got Luka Vuskovic backed off a loan from the Bundesliga, that's an amazing window, because it immediately helps this team right away. And especially on the left side where depth just isn't that great. It as far as I'm concerned, it balances out this team in more ways than one. Plus, it adds competition at the left back position, which is absolutely dire at this stage. And also, it creates competition on the left side, and I think it actually gives a little bit more balance to our attack. And I think we're going to be better off of it. So, for me, it's like personally, I think we can do better. But again, if we ended up with Semenyo, I still would be happy. All right, so those are our news and notes for the day. And again, for those that are tuning in, Dominic Solanke is training on grass, and that is absolutely fantastic news because when I think about the striker position, I think that especially in the second half of the season, I think Thomas Frank is going to get a lot of good use out of Dominic Solanke. I don't see him leaving, not until the summer at least. And from that standpoint, I also think it's going to help both Kolo Muani and Richarlison, especially when it comes to rotation at that position, and especially in European play and also FA Cup play. I also think that it's going to bolster this attack as well too. So from that standpoint, it's a welcome addition. But that being said, for me, the real addition is going to be Dejan Kulusevski when he finally is ready to come back. But it is what it is. All right. So tomorrow at 9:00, Spurs will be traveling to Nottingham. and they're going to be taking on Forest. Overall, I believe Spurs have played 63 games at the City Ground. 23 wins, 21 draws to 19 losses. So it's a pretty close head to head away from the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last year. I believe Forest pulled off the double, including I think it was Boxing Day 2024, and then of course in April 2025. Spurs did beat them in December of 2023, and I believe it was August of 2024, 2022, in the early portion of the season. So from that standpoint, there is recent success there. The interesting thing about this matchup is I don't necessarily know what to make of it, because on the one hand, Spurs have won 2 on the bounce. And especially in one of those against Brentford, they actually looked pretty goddamn solid in that matchup. Getting a clean sheet, doing some decent things on the counterattack as well, too. Xavi getting a goal and assist in that match, and the way that he was deployed was absolutely a stroke of genius. And then on the other side against Slavia Praha in the Champions League, they didn't even, they came close in the first 3 minutes, to scoring a goal in the run-up play. It didn't necessarily work out, and as the game progressed, when things didn't necessarily work the way that they wanted to, they kind of reverted back to some old patterns, and from that standpoint, they didn't necessarily look as tight. They didn't look as composed in the run-up play. Granted, it's hard to nitpick considering they get 2 penalties and they get an own goal and they win 3-0. So from that standpoint, yes, they won. So it's hard to really complain about it, but it almost felt like the things that they did right against Brentford, it almost feels like they took a half a step backwards against Slavia. But it is 2 on the bounce. So now you're going into a matchup against a Forest team that's 17th in the Premier League, and they have a negative goal differential. A lot of that has to do with the instability of how this season progressed, losing Nuno, then getting Ange Postecoglou, and now all of a sudden that style of play is automatically flipped on its head, because obviously Ange is not the type of coach that is going to play pragmatic football. He is literally going. He's literally going to damn the torpedoes. Everybody gets forward, and that's just the way that he likes to play. And now he lasts 40 days, and now they get Sean Dyche. And so now that gets turned back on its head. Since Sean has been in charge at Forest, they've had some relatively decent results, but they've also had some pretty bad results as well, too. And I think a lot of that has to do with the instability of having 3 managers in the course of 3 months. So from that standpoint, it almost feels like we're getting Forest at the right time. But in my estimation, I don't necessarily think this is about Forest. I think this is about Spurs, and we have to actually ask the tough question of whether or not we have actually turned a corner. And it's a very hard question to ask. It's a very hard question to answer, because unfortunately, I don't think the answer is yes. And then it's like, actually, I don't know. And that's the reality of it, because we start the season by getting 17 points in the first couple of months, and it looks like things are progressing in the right direction. And then November hits, and for a month and a half now, it hasn't been good. And so when you get this little form, it's like, okay, you want to read into it as a fan. You want to get excited, because it's like, okay, maybe maybe it is, maybe I am looking at this from a fan perspective, and I want to read far more into it. But that being said, it's like I look at that Slavia game and I'm kind of like, damn. It's like, damn, we kind of reverted when things didn't go right. We kind of reverted a little bit. It was interesting, because I remember that Newcastle game, the second Newcastle game about a week and a half ago, was a good indicator, right? It's like, on the one hand, we get a result when otherwise we probably shouldn't have. And Christian Romero steps up and gets 2 goals, and we overcome difficulty. But we've already seen that this year. We've seen our ability to come back in a game and get a result. We saw it at Brighton. We saw it a couple other different times this season where it felt like the game was lost, and then all of a sudden somebody steps up, we get a result. That's great. What we haven't seen is this team put a team to the sword this year. We have not seen it yet. For whatever reason, that has not happened. And for me, it's like if we're truly turning a corner, we're going to do that at least a couple times. We have yet to see it. And so from that standpoint, have we turned a corner? Like I want to say yes. I really do. But against a Slavia Praha team, and you don't score a goal from the run of play, surely Brentford's a better team. And we were able to create overloads, and we were able to do some very good things, especially on the counterattack. Xavi had his coming out party. And I know that there were certain elements of that game we were trying to replicate in that Slavia game. And for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. Whether that was good defense or whether it was not necessarily a good run, for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. And then what happens? We kind of go back to what we've seen over the last month and a half when it comes to the buildup, or in the counterattack where we'll slow it down. And now all of a sudden, instead of progressing the ball forward, we're going to concede soft spots in areas, and then we're going to pass out of them, and we're going to pass back, and we're going to pass sideways, and we're going to relinquish areas of the pitch that we have absolutely no business doing it against a team like Slavia Praha. So from that standpoint, I don't know, man. I look at this and I'm like, I don't think so, man. Like, I don't think so. Now, does that mean I don't think we can't beat Nottingham Forest? Yeah, I certainly think that we have every opportunity to beat Nottingham Forest because, number one, technically this season we're better on the road than we are at home. And this isn't like we're going to Anfield or going to the Emirates. It's the city ground. And again, it's no disrespect to a team like Nottingham Forest, but that being said, it's like I would like to think that there is going to be some momentum going into this one. And I think that when you look at the fact that we had that Newcastle result, and then we had Brentford and the Slavia Praha result, I think there's going to be some good vibes, and I think there's going to be some carryover into that match. But that being said, it's like I'm also the type of guy that doesn't want to. I don't want to overlook Forest. Was last year, did they outperform their, did Forest outperform their numbers last year? Sure, but they also still beat the teams that were in front of them when they needed to. And when you look at the way that Sean Dyche has come in trying to stabilize it, he's going to play to that team's strength. And I would probably assume that tomorrow we're probably going to control 60 to 65% of the possession. And we're going to have to do so. We're going to have to do some things that are going to be uncomfortable. And mainly we're going to have to break down, a low block. Haven't necessarily seen it. We're going to have to attack channels consistently. And we're going to have to put pressure coming forward. And we're going to have to do it with an unbalanced team a little bit. Surely I think we can win it. But it's an interesting matchup. It really is. From a Forest perspective, man, their last couple, defensive performances have not been great. And, so from that standpoint, there's going to be areas where we're going to be able to exploit. And I would probably assume it's going to be on that right-hand side. We have the talent to create overload. So from that standpoint, I like it. But again, do we have the balance to be able to do it off the left side as well too? And if you noticed in that Slavia game, I think a lot of people just assumed that we were just going to be blowing it down the right hand side. Same thing with the Brentford match. Being on the pre-match build-up over there on the Irish Hotspur. I think it was a universal. Agreement that we were just going to try to boot it down the right side and try to make something happen. And we saw a lot of attacking off that left hand side to the point where that's where the overload and the mismatch were, and we are actually absolutely able to take advantage of it. And because of that, it opened up the right side, and we saw what Xavi was able to do. So I would probably assume that, that is probably going to be in the playbook tomorrow as well too. And I wouldn't be surprised if, Frank tries to go with Kolo Muani off the left hand side, trying to replicate some of that success that we saw in Brentford. So from that standpoint, I don't look at tomorrow as a massive test, but it's also a match that you actually do want to go there and pick up 3 points, because when I look at the upcoming schedule, this is a massive 3 points. Let me pull it up, because we have, after Forest, we have Liverpool at home, Palace at Selhurst Park on the 28th. Then we get Brentford on the 1st there, and then we get Sunderland on the 4th. Before we actually have to go to Bournemouth and travel down to Bournemouth. Those aren't going to be easy wins. Like, I don't put anything past Liverpool. Yeah, I understand it. They're not right now. There's a lot of chaos going on, but they're still Liverpool, and they're still capable of battering us if we're not careful. You know what I mean? So from that standpoint, tomorrow is actually kind of a big match, just considering what's on deck. Because I don't like the idea of Liverpool and Palace back to back. To me, I think that's like, that has the potential to go wrong if we're not watching. We're not watching our backs correctly. So from that standpoint, man, I like the idea of our ability to go to the City Ground and picking up 3 points. I think it's going to be in some ways it has the potential to be an even matchup. I think Morgan Gibbs White is their leading goal scorer. I think he's got 3 so far. Lately essentially hasn't necessarily been the same player, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's been an unstable season this year. I don't think they're going to go down. I think me personally, I would probably assume that in the next month to 2 months, they're going to be a little bit higher up in the table. I can't see them in a scenario where they're going to stay in that 17th position. Clearly, I think they're a little bit better than West Ham. I think they're potentially better than Leeds and Brentford. So I would probably assume that in a month and a half, 2 months, they're probably going to be in that 10th to 15th, that 10th to 15th stage in the table. So again, I would just want to see some continuity from this club tomorrow. I want to see them take what they've done well, double down on some of the things that we saw, and I just want to see this team put Nottingham Forest to the sword. We're equally capable of doing it. I think over the last couple matches, especially at home in that environment, I think we also showed a willingness to actually start a match quickly. That was one of my biggest bugaboos, was essentially conceding the first half, trying to play this ultra-conservative game where you're going to be a little bit more defensive, kind of try to hang around to that 60th, 70th minute, and then make substitutions and then try to nick a goal and get a result. Like, it's not a viable way to play football. And that was one of the things that I think I appreciated over the last couple matches, the fact that we're actually pushing the tempo early, trying to get that lead, because listen, I'll be the first one to say this. this defense is far more comfortable protecting leads than trying to protect a 0-0 game. Because when you're asking some of these guys and putting pressure on their shoulders to try to be perfect, that's when mistakes come into play. And they certainly have had their fair share of mistakes over the course of the last month and a half. And it's just not a viable way to play football. This team does and plays a lot better when they are actually protecting a lead. And from that standpoint, we've seen it over the last 2 matches. They are willing to be on the front foot and push the pace and keep that pace for like a good hour. And so that to me is a positive that I would like to see some carryover. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't give a shit where we're playing. We actually have to play our football and we actually have to dictate the terms versus allowing your opponent to do it, because there is a way to beat Spurs and teams know how to do it. And that's by putting us on the back foot early. And one of the things that I would hate to see tomorrow is that happen. Because right now, Nottingham Forest is not a team that should scare you because of all the turmoil and everything that's been going on with them. They're a team that actually likes to concede possession, and will give you the ball and will sit low and then attack you on the counter. So from that standpoint, we're going to have plenty of opportunity to dominate. It's just taking advantage of those attacking sequences and making sure we actually finish. And so from that standpoint, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how Frank draws this one up, because over the course of the last month and a half, we haven't really been good doing that. There was a stretch there from the beginning of November till essentially like the first week of December, where essentially every single time that we were trying to build up, there was nothing really to aim to in the box. We only had one attacker in the box at any time. It's like, dude, that's not viable. It's not viable. It's like, I know a lot of people gave Richie stick, but he is much better when there's multiple attackers in the box where he's able to use his skill set, because there's other focal points in the box, right? If you're asking him to be that one dude in the box, he's gonna get dominated by center backs. It's just not viable, man. And we've seen that since PSG, really, where all of a sudden, when we're starting with 2 strikers, or if we're in a situation where we're almost playing with 2 high forwards, 2 10s, like they're playing as 2 inside forwards, and all of a sudden you have one attacking the left side channel, the other attacking the right sided channel, 2 wing backs essentially, and then you have your primary striker. Now all of a sudden you have 3-4 different guys that you can actually aim to in the box. And it's going to allow some of your better attackers to get into good positions in order to receive the ball. And it's no coincidence, since there's been that tactical adjustment. Now all of a sudden, I think Richarlison has scored 4 in his last 5. It's no coincidence that when you actually overload certain areas, you're going to get very good results. And from that standpoint, we've seen it, right? So from that I can't speak English. For tomorrow, it's going to have to be the exact same game plan. But that being said, it's like, what happens if Forrest is going to bunker? How are we going to solve that riddle? But that being said, it's, I look at their center backs versus our front 3 attackers, and I'm like, I kind of like the idea of of Kola Moani potentially being at the back post attacking from the right side. So we'll see. I'm going to give my starting 11, and I'm also going to give you my prediction. And I think I'm going to begin in goal because obviously it's going to be Vicario. Until there is actually going to be legit competition for Vicario, it's obviously, unless he gets hurt or whatever the case may be, that is probably going to be your number 1. And it's sad too, because I know now that word has come out that Kinski's agent has said that he is massively disappointed, because when he was brought in, there was a guarantee for first team playing time, but that was again under Postecoglou. And now under Thomas Frank, everything has changed. And so now he has kind of been relegated to training. And of course, you have a new coaching staff that's evaluating it. And unfortunately, they don't rate him. And so I think this would be a situation for a guy like Kinski to leave in January. I'm sure he's going to have multiple teams lining up for his services. He's a very good young goalie with a high upside. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, Thomas Frank and his coaching staff do not rate him. And so until we actually get legit competition for Vicario, it's going to be Vicario. My back four is going to be Porro on the right, and of course it's going to be Porro. Because of the lack of depth on the left-handed side, and now that Udoji is going to be out for a while, Jed Spence is going to be manning that left-hand side, and so unfortunately, who else is it going to be? And I would find it hard to believe that Archie Gray is going to go back into that spot. Maybe if Porro gets injured. But that being said, I mean, as long as Porro is healthy and, he's not completely knackered, he's probably going to be on that right side at that right back position. Obviously, Van de Ven and Romero, 1-2. But that being said, if Thomas Frank decides that maybe he wants to throw a curveball and go with the back three, obviously there's Danso, but there's also Ben Davies. Ben Davies is back now too. So from that standpoint, there are a little bit better options now if he wants to go in that direction. But we've only seen it a couple times, and so at that standpoint, I would probably just assume it's going to be the center back pairing of Van de Ven and Romero, and on the left hand side, it's going to be Jed Spence. My midfield three is going to be João Palhinha, and I don't get it, man. Maybe you guys can let me know this. I've seen this on social media now, and maybe you guys can help me make sense of this, but there's a lot of hate towards João Palhinha. And I get it, man. Maybe he's not the most pacey, but he is our best midfielder IQ wise. When it comes to football IQ, that dude puts out fires that we don't have another midfielder that's capable of doing it at the number 6 position. There's a reason why we brought him in. There's a reason why I'm actually predicting now that we're going to make it permanent. He brings so much to the table at this stage, and I'll concede that Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall are the future of our midfield. And in some aspects, I'd like to see that future begin now. But that being said, it's like you can't take out your best defensive midfielder from your starting 11. Unless his play falls off so drastically that he's actually hurting this team, João Palhinha has got to start in the Premier League at that position, and that's where I have him out. Again, let me know exactly. Maybe you guys can help me make sense of it, because there's some Spurs fans that I don't know what their issue is with João Palhinha. On top of the fact that not only is he our best defensive midfielder, but he's also scored 6 goals so far this season. So he also has the ability to pop up and put one in too when you least expect it. The other midfielder that I'm picking tomorrow is Archie Gray. I think the evolution of Archie Gray has been so fun to watch. But one of the things that I love about Archie is he doesn't make mistakes. He's not the type of guy who's going to turtle when it comes to pressure. He doesn't make errant passes. He doesn't make mistakes. And he always seems to be in a very good position, whether it's moving forward or whether it's tracking back to get in a good defensive shape. The dude is just solid. And I think his play over the last 3 weeks has been so good where I don't think that you can drop him at this stage unless he's tired or, for whatever reason, or if he's carrying a knock. Okay, fine. You have Patsar, you have Betancourt, you have Bergvall, but I don't know, man. There's something about Archie Gray that I like, and I kind of like him in that box to box role, especially getting forward, because again, his movement is so good and his IQ is so good that he's actually an asset coming forward. But you also know that he's not going to be a liability tracking back, and I like the idea of him playing next to Palhinha as well too. I actually think that is one of the bigger things that's going to help him moving forward is that, playing next to Polina and understanding exactly how he operates and getting on the same page with a guy like that is going to be so more helpful than not. I like the idea of Archie Gray starting tomorrow in that position. Of course, I got Xavi playing underneath as the creative midfielder, as the guy pulling the string. And I think maybe him getting dropped for a few weeks certainly helped him. Maybe it helped him reset, who knows, or maybe it just, relit a fire, whoever, whatever the case may be. He's certainly been awesome since he's come back into the starting 11. And then my attacking three, I think it's probably going to be Kolo Muani on the left, and I think it's going to be Richarlison through the middle, and I think it's going to be Kudus outright. But I mean, how we attack, it's going to end up looking like there's going to be two up top. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's Archie Gray and Jed Spence kind of doing 1-2s on the left-hand side, trying to create space over on the left-hand side. That would be my guess, because I have a feeling that the overload is going to be on the right-hand side with Xavi, Kudus, Richarlison. Me personally, that's just the way that I see it. But all right, and of course, my score prediction is going to be 3-1. I do think Spurs are going to win tomorrow. Again, it's kind of weird predicting wins, because there for like a good 6 weeks I was predicting a draw because, this team just was toothless in the attack. And every single week it just seemed to play out the exact same way. But obviously Brentford, I predicted a 2-1 victory over Brentford, and it turned out to be a 2-0. So from that standpoint, I also predicted a victory against Slavia Praha. And from that standpoint, I'm going to predict victory tomorrow as well, too. 3-1. My goal scorers tomorrow are going to be Richarlison, Xavi, and Mickey Van de Ven. Yeah. Mickey Van de Ven off a corner. Yeah. Those are my 3 goal scorers. And, of course, we're going to leak one because we have a tendency to do that. But from that standpoint, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care, guys. Have a good day.